The High Evolutionary in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is the most evil villain the MCU has seen in recent years. Hell, he might be the most villainous villain in all of the Marvel phases we've seen play out on screen. Now yes, I'm aware of Thanos, I'm aware of Killmonger, Red Skull, even Kang, but none of those villains hold a candle to the MCU's High Evolutionary. So let's get into why the High Evolutionary is the MCU's most evil villain. Now, the villains that came before him and Kang all have depth and many layers behind their villainy, but the High Evolutionary's lack of any remorse or humanity will see him go down as one of the MCU's darkest villains. Now, I'm going to explore what it is exactly that makes me consider him more evil than the man who snapped half the universe out of existence, because compared to the High Evolutionary, Thanos is just a blip on his radar. Now, spoilers ahead if you haven't seen Guardians 3 just yet, so feel free to jump ship now. Everyone else, you're going nowhere. You know, like that severed celestial head they live in. Let's go.
Gravity itself serves my whims.
Who is the High Evolutionary? Now, the short answer is he's one bad mother. Now, in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, he's a mad scientist who is hell-bent on taking what he deems as lower life forms, primarily animals, and conducts brutal experiments on them to enhance their intellect, all to pursue an insane goal to create the perfect society by first creating the perfect species. And with the help of a genetically altered rocket, which he viciously experimented upon, he's able to do so. In the comics, the High Evolutionary first ran experiments on his pet Dalmatian, turning him into a humanoid who was later shot by poachers. Now, this was before he got the moniker the High Evolutionary. But it was at that moment he realized his unconventional experiments on lower life forms, such as our four-legged friends, would never be able to live in the human world. Now, this was the beginning of his burgeoning God complex. The MCU's High Evolutionary differs from his comic book counterpart, since it doesn't seem like the MCU's version of the villain is from Earth.
I visited your planet many years ago.
Earth hasn't been my planet in a long time.
Your people had wonderful spirit.
Now, in Guardians 3, he had a conversation with Peter Quill on Counter-Earth where he mentions how he visited Earth many years ago and how its people have a wonderful spirit. Now, that'd be strange to say if he were in fact from Earth, but it also adds a lot of mystery behind the character, which we will hopefully see more of in future movies. Now, while he appeared to have died in his ship's explosion, we didn't necessarily see him physically die. So it's possible he could have escaped, and hopefully we'll see more of him somewhere down the line in future Marvel movies.
I'm not trying to conquer the universe. I'm perfecting it.
Now that we know a little bit more about the High Evolutionary, let's explore why I consider him to be the most evil antagonist in the MCU. Now, I want to do this by comparing his motives and actions to that of other antagonists we've seen throughout the Marvel Cinematic Universe, primarily the ones that have had the most influence and impact with lasting consequences. I'm talking Thanos, Killmonger, and soon-to-be major villain Kang.
If you think I'm evil, well, just wait.
The hardest choices require the strongest wills.
Much like the High Evolutionary, Thanos too has a bit of a complex, a god complex some might say. But his motivations for eliminating half of the universe's population was due to what he witnessed on his home planet, Titan. Now, he noticed over time how overpopulation hastened the depletion of resources on his home planet. Now, he knew what would happen if this progressed, but had to watch his home collapse from afar because he was stuck in exile. Now, in his twisted mind, blipping half the population was his way of preventing the overexploitation of resources from happening across the universe. Now, he wanted to spare the universe from suffering a similar fate to Titan. Now, the High Evolutionary, on the other hand, is someone who has brought forth new life on a planet known as Counter-Earth, only to callously destroy it without remorse. Now, he seems to be consumed with the idea of creating the perfect species and the perfect world. Now, should either of those fail to meet his expectations, he'd be willing to end it all and start over without hesitation. Now, Thanos, as radical as his plan was, still came from a misguided place of compassion. And while his plan to blip half the universe's population was unconventional, he at least chose a method that didn't bring immense pain to its victims. Now, when the High Evolutionary extracted his ship from Counter-Earth, which was seemingly the lifeline of that planet, it caused the planet to explode, killing its millions of inhabitants. Now, the High Evolutionary doesn't seem to care about the physical or emotional pain his actions may cause to others. His obsession with the perfect creation has blinded his judgment to the point that even his closest allies betrayed him in the end. Now, Ebony Maw and Proxima Midnight were loyal to Thanos and his cause, knowing that he wouldn't put them in a similar situation we see the High Evolutionary putting his subjects in towards the climax of the film. Now, those closest to the High Evolutionary eventually turned against him in an attempt to save him from himself and to subsequently save their own lives. Now, towards the end of Guardians 3, the High Evolutionary was everything but rational. He simply wanted Rocket's brain to study so that he could figure out how this lower life form, in his words, knew something he didn't. Now, he actually said to Rocket, "How can you know what hasn't been thought of?" He felt that if he hadn't thought of it, then it can't be known, especially from something he altered to give intelligence.
Well, I didn't ask to get made. I didn't ask to be torn apart and put back together over and over and turned into some little monster.
These items aren't for sale.
How do you think your ancestors got these?
Now, looking at Killmonger, it's kind of hard to consider him a villain. You know, there's a distinct difference between a villain and a traditional character foil for a protagonist, usually referred to as an antagonist. Now, Killmonger was shaped by his childhood, especially the traumatic event of witnessing his father's murder by the hands of his uncle T'Chaka. Now, as he grew up, he was very aware of Wakanda's existence and his connection to the foreign country. Now, growing up outside the kingdom, he was motivated to become the new Black Panther due to his belief that Wakanda shouldn't keep its resources a secret to the world. Like, he believed that by sharing its resources, it helped those oppressed around the world. Now, Killmonger's flaw, much like Thanos's, was that his methods were, and I'm being very generous here, a touch aggressive. He might have wanted to improve the current state of the world, but his use of extreme violence to do so just didn't sit well with T'Challa. But in the end, it did inspire T'Challa, who took a more peaceful route to carrying out some of Killmonger's beliefs. Now, Killmonger's motivation was to share resources that were kept tight within the invisible walls of Wakanda. Now, the High Evolutionary didn't want to share resources or knowledge with anyone. Like, he was very selfish, and his selfishness and jealousy is what sent him on a mad search for Rocket, as Rocket was able to come up with the solution for the High Evolutionary's evolution machine that led to its test subjects being peaceful, as opposed to its previous results where the test subjects were violent upon the rapid evolution process.
I've been dubbed many names by many people. A ruler, a conqueror.
All right, now we land on the big bad guy of Phase 5, Kang the Conqueror. Now, his ultimate goal is to simply do just that. Conquer. Now, while we're slowly seeing his motivations play out in the MCU, Kevin Feige has spoken about what made Kang different. Now, he said, quote, "He's a different type of villain warring amongst themselves as much as he's warring with our heroes." Now, due to Kang's multiversal escapades, there are numerous variants, even an entire council of Kangs. Now, so far, we've seen this character manipulate various different timelines and realities, which will definitely be problematic for the multiverse. But as far as comparing his antics to the insidious actions of the High Evolutionary, well, they kind of pale in comparison. Now, there's still plenty of time to see where things go regarding Kang, but with his cruelty to animals, the destruction of a living, populated planet, and his irrational rage towards any life form that might know more than him, puts him at the top of the Marvel Cinematic Universe as its most evil villain ever. And if you don't believe me, then have you seen the movie? Seriously, the guy is all kinds of bad, especially in comparison to the aforementioned MCU antagonists. But, you know, maybe I'm missing something or someone, and I'd love for you to share those comments down below.
Earth would be a fabulous place were it not for the ignorance and bigotry.
Okay.
Now, for more on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, check out our ending explained. And for more on the MCU, keep watching IGN.
I'm not trying to conquer the universe. I'm perfecting it.